Hi.
Hi, we're back then.
Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast. This is the 4th episode now.
It is. Well, this is going to be the fourth one release, though.
Yeah.
Oh, right, wicked. Cool. So, we're down with Will today after he's done his 50-miler barefoot in the sun.
Whoop woo!
Woo! Smashed it, boyo. Well done.
Walking and that, innit?
Walking and stuff. Carrying rings of Mordor.
Yeah. My feet are
Let's talk on your feet before we do anything.
kinky.
Kinky. Well, Sam would agree on that.
Sam's going to love this.
We've actually got a question
feet.
about your feet, haven't we, from Instagram? So let's actually hop straight into that. So, where were we? Oh, what condition were your feet in during and after the event? And were there any specific sort of protocols used for training your feet on the run up to it?
So just jumping straight in. No, I didn't do anything specifically. I planned to. I was planning on doing a 13-week foot conditioning program to strengthen my feet up and get them calloused up to take it outdoors, and just strengthen the skin up so I didn't puncture it.
Yeah. So, do you find that the experience being a rock climber and conditioning the hands came in handy there at all?
No, not really.
They're just hands on the bottom of your legs, aren't they?
So that was the plan. I did a little bit of hill sprints, barefoot. I didn't really do any longer runs barefoot. And then the sort of week and a half before the event, I started doing barefoot skipping on the concrete outside.
Yeah, good for the ankles, that as well.
Yeah,
So you're basically saying you winged it.
Yeah. As per with me, I just wing everything.
That is your style. I mean, we wouldn't take it any differently either.
It's a good style to have.
It is. So, that is your non-training protocol. So you had a plan, you threw out the window. That's classic. Well, what were your feet like on the day? Let's take us to like the middle of the event. Let's go straight into that. Were they like hour to hour?
Well, we'll go from the start.
Yeah.
I think that makes more sense than from the middle. So
I don't know, with you might want to just hop to the end, then go to the middle, then go back to the end, then go to the start.
I don't go on as many tangents as you, Taylor. I do things logically.
My tangents have logic.
Is that screen meant to be off?
I'm not too sure.
It's still recording.
Still
Sorry,
recording.
one of the screens just went off.
Let's
We
get
got
that.
like 3 different screens on the go because technology's not as simple as it claims to be.
Apparently.
So going back into the event, I'll just overview sort of each section of the path. So the first sort of probably 2 miles of the path was pretty rocky. Most of it was fairly big rock, so it wasn't too bad, but then there was enough that would just like jab in your feet for it to be annoying. So that's sort of like the first 2-3 miles. After that, it clears up a lot. So there was lots of grass and it was really easy. So I just ended up running a lot of that. Feet felt great. It goes quite boggy in places though. So there was like lots of mud that you're sinking into, quite moist ground. But that actually helped later on in the challenge.
Yeah, I bet it's a bit soothing.
Yeah.
Did you find, you normally go out and you're getting some real thick mud. Even if you've got boots on, you look at it and you get this kind of like weird hesitance with your feet. You look down, you're like, ugh, and you tread a lot lighter. Did you find being barefoot, you were like, screw it, and just taking your feet full in with no hesitance?
Yeah, I just didn't care.
Pretty freeing, isn't it?
Barefoot, just didn't have to worry about my feet getting too wet. Because it was a fairly like dry, hot day anyway.
Yeah.
So they dried out really quickly and the moisture was nice. So
We can say that, you got bloody sunstroke.
so then so after that sort of nice section, it's like that for a good like 10 miles with like a few variations along the way. Nothing too bad though. So I'd maybe do like half a mile on really rough terrain and then like half a mile on nice terrain, and it would just sort of undulate quite a lot. And then it got to the section towards the end where the last 2 miles on the first day were the worst 2 miles pretty much of the whole thing.
Tell us about those 2 miles then.
I'll get more into that later on because that'll fit into the story.
Right.
So I'll go more into that. And then the second day, woke up, started pretty good. Like, again, just a bit undulating, but mostly grassy, few rocks.
Just
not
to clear
too
that
bad.
for people who don't know, like, the second day, because this was all done in less than 24 hours, but you started at, was it Sunday night you started?
Yeah, I started 5 p.m. Sunday night after work.
Yeah, and you did have little sleeps in between as well.
Yeah, I had a 3-hour nap.
Wicked. So what if we shaved the 3-hour nap off? What was the actual time to do it?
Just over 20 hours.
Just over 20 hours. Nice.
Without the nap, but the nap helped a lot.
Yeah, I bet you did.
So then, yeah, that section was pretty good. And then we hit a point, which would have been not much longer after the halfway point, where it was just 2 solid miles on those sort of medium-sized rocks, where you can't really walk on it. Every step was painful. There wasn't much grass either side, and the bits where it was grassy, it was just lots of spiky bushes in the grass.
Yeah.
And those 2 miles just felt never ending.
I bet.
After that bit, it wasn't too bad. It gets really grassy again. And then by that point, my feet were just in so much pain that just stepping on any form of like semi-dry grass felt like I was being stabbed in the feet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then that was the end after that.
So, why did you actually finish in the end? Because you had this map set out, the route, which I was expecting to meet you halfway for the route at Pen y Fan, but that's not how it went on the day, did it?
Well, Pen y Fan wasn't like meant to be halfway. Pen y Fan was meant to be just over 3/4 of the way.
Oh yeah, that's it. That was the way on the map.
I think it was meant to be about mile 40.
Yeah.
Was meant to be Pen
So
y
you
Fan.
set off
Or mile 35, mile 40 between that.
You started north of Swansea, didn't you? Like Neath area.
Yeah, so I started in Llandalio.
Yep, and then you finished at.
And I ended up finishing at Pen y Fan.
Yeah. Like
the original finish was meant to be
Crickhow. Yeah.
But what happened was I had one route planned out, and then a week before the challenge, me and Sam went and scouted the route.
Yeah.
And that 2-mile section that I was on about, we basically found a path like that 2-mile section, which went on for way more than 2 miles. That was going to be like a good sort of 5-6 mile section of the path.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't fancy that, to be honest.
Now that you've finished it, though, are you actually glad that you came across that 2-mile section where you just had to eat shit?
No.
No,
that was awful. I hated it.
Oh, good.
But so we found that 6-mile section of just really, really rough, horrible path.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't fancy this. So I went back and I just Google Maps, just did satellite view, and I found like an alternative route. I had no idea how long the alternative route was. I was like, oh, it looks pretty similar. And I started off the alternative route, and then on that route, we also then decided to make some diversions to miss out some changes in elevation.
Yeah.
Which added distance on. So then it ended up being, 50 miles to the bottom of Pen y Fan. Talking about distances, I was tracking it on my Whoop, which was really annoying because I only found this out after the first day. I didn't even know you could track routes on a Whoop until I clicked on the hiking bit, and then it has this little slider at the top, track route. And I was like, yeah, of course I want to track the route. It'll save me using like Strava on top of my Whoop to save my phone battery. So I was like, I'll just use the Whoop. And the whole time I was looking at it, tracking it, and then like it would tell you the time, the distance, everything you'd usually expect to find out on something. It even had like a map. And And then when I clicked end and it processes the tracking and everything,
Yeah.
it didn't come up with a map. It just showed me my heart rate.
Oh,
And I was like,
missed a
what's the
lot.
point in tracking the route if it's not even going to save it?
Do you think it just lost signal or what? Or
No,
maybe
so
it's just
I'm
more
pretty sure
ambitious
what
than
it
it's built
is.
for?
I'm pretty sure what it is the fact that I use Android.
Yeah.
I think Whoop is optimized for
iOS. Yeah, I'm not
so I
surprised
don't think
at
it saves it, because it definitely saves it on iOS. Because I
So
was
what did
looking
you
it
use
up.
to track it in the end then?
Well, that's what I was using to track it. So when it got to the second day, I was looking at it, and it got to a point where I thought it was going up really slowly anyway, but I was like, maybe I'm just walking slower today. And then I didn't look at it for a few hours, and then I looked at it again, and it jumped distance. And I was like, whoa, I haven't been walking that fast. So then when I finished, I was really questioning whether I'd finished or not. And
Yeah.
I'd come home, and it was bugging me for like 2 hours in my head. And I was like, did I actually finish? And yeah, it was really getting to me. And then, funnily enough, I got a notification from Google being like, "Oh, a year ago you went to this place, and it does your timeline thing of where you went and everything."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I wonder if it will tell me about the walk."
Yeah.
So I went on Google then just to be like, I really hope it's tracked it. And it did. And it had broken it down into two parts, because one part where I had like a bit of a break, it just didn't count that, and it
That was
split it into
sleep,
two.
was it?
No, it was just randomly on the second day it decided to do that. So then it said I did 47 miles, and then it stopped, and then it said I did a 5.3 mile. So overall, I did 52.3 miles.
So well over 50 miles then.
Yeah, so
Good margin.
I was so relieved when it came up, because I was so convinced that I hadn't done the distance, because I was like, we was just messing up, like.
We were talking about that actually when we was it yesterday. You
Yeah.
texted me when you finished the event. You get like a lot of anxiety that, like, especially with these things, because they're not like an official organised event like a marathon. You sometimes are like, oh crap, did I actually do the full sets, the full volume, the full number, the full time, the full distance? And it's because you're in such a blurry state as well after you finish. Like, your head's all over the place. You're quite kind of out your body a little bit. You're very much in it at times as well. That you kind of lose the sense of like, oh crap, did I actually record everything? And that's why it's quite important if I have other people there who are fully awake, tracking things for you.
So that caused loads of anxiety with me for like I said, that 2 hour period where I was just sat at home and I was just sitting down trying to rest, and that was all that was going through my head was, did I actually do it? Like, I was really questioning it. But then looking back, I think what had happened, because I literally had no signal for the morning on the second day.
Yeah.
I think the Whoop just wasn't tracking the distance because I didn't have any signal. And then all of a sudden, when I looked at it, it just jumped that distance and was like,
Yeah,
made up
Strava
for
does
what
that
it
as well. It's quite useless for that.
So I think that's what happened. But looking at the Google map and everything, it looked pretty accurate with where I went. So
Yeah,
I was happy.
you definitely went over it. Definitely.
So, yeah.
I mean, you had to walk around the house as well afterwards for a bit, so that probably had a couple meters on, including your. Do you want to tell me about your little trip in the night?
Oh, right. So, after the walk, I got home, struggled to sleep straight away. I was like a bit wired. Body was just pounding. But I did eventually get to sleep and feeling not too bad. 1:30 in the morning, I wake up and I just really need to throw up. So, as you do, if you need to throw up, you run to the bathroom. I couldn't run to the bathroom. So I got up and I tried running to the bathroom, and I got out of my bedroom, which is like 4 steps, and I collapsed onto the floor, like bashed into my radiator on the way down. And then I was still like throwing up in my mouth, so I was like stumbling about, walking into my door, walking into my sofa.
Across the floor with you.
No, because I kept trying to stand up, and I just like my ankles were in a pretty bad state, so I couldn't really do much, and I just kept stumbling everywhere.
This is why people should do more bear crawls on the trail.
And then I ended up just throwing up in my sink, lying down for half hour, feeling really sorry for myself, and then all of a sudden I was fine, and I just got up and walked back to bed.
Cool. And we found out that you didn't really feel sick because of the 50 miler. It was because of something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had sunstroke. So, yeah. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but my face is a little bit sunburnt still.
He's got a proper
so
red tan line just above the collar. You had a fleece on, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you've got the line proper there. And you didn't wear a hat, did you?
I did not.
Yeah, and you've got really short hair as well, so it really doesn't help.
Yeah, and I could just feel, like, the next morning, I could just feel the burn on my head, and I could barely touch my head because it was that sensitive.
Why didn't you wear a hat?
I didn't want to.
Did you forget?
No, I had hats out, but, like...
You just didn't want to wear one.
I just didn't fancy wearing a hat that day.
It's strange when you get into it, like everyone's there trying to give you help and support, and you need to do this, you should have this, and you just start pushing it away. You just want to do what you want to do. It happens.
Well, no one really, on the day or anything, no one said, "Oh, I think you should be wearing a hat, Will." Why did no one say anything?
I know. I normally go out with the food on the events where it's like, well, what do you want to eat? And I just want fruit. I just want fruit. I just want a banana. Or I just want a bit of peanut butter. People are, well, you need to have this pot noodle or something. I'm like, oh, fuck off. I don't want pot noodle. I don't want to sit down with a fork. I want to just keep going. Especially like on the yoke as well, because I could just hold a banana in one hand like this, and I go like, well, I'm trying to carry the yoke. Keep walking, take a bite. And then someone would be like, banana peel, just check it aside. And then some ketchup bump in the bin. But then with the, some extra to stop and eat, it's a bit of a pain in the arse. Especially if you need something a bit more nutritious as well, it might be a bit more dense. And I mean, that's stopping, slowing down. That's trying to take more food on when you're feeling like vomiting as well.
Yeah.
Should we have another question from Instagram?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Right then. This is a good one, straight off for that. If you were to do it again, would you have done anything differently?
In my head, I want to say yes.
Yeah, we know in your head you always have good ideas.
But I know that if I did it again next year, I would do exactly the same and not plan anything.
You'd plan and then you'd forget about it.
It's not that I forget the plan. The plan's always in the back of my head and I'm always like, I should probably doing this. But the fact that I should be doing it makes me not want to do it.
Why can't you stick to plans then?
I can. Because I have done. Because when I was doing Olympic lifting, my coach wrote me a plan and I stuck to it.
Why can't you do it for these though?
Because I feel like I have to. And I don't like people telling me I have to do things.
It's only you telling you have to. No one's coming along chasing you going, well, you have to run 50 miles for charity with no shoes on across the Brecon Beacons. So I think this is the most quoted thing from my family is you don't have to carry that yoke. Like, you don't have to hit the tyre with the sledgehammer. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I want to.
But yeah, I think that's just me.
There is like no single component. You wouldn't change the way you planned it. You wouldn't change the route. You wouldn't change. Would you wear a hat?
Probably not, no. In my head, what I would do is I would check the route out a bit better beforehand to try and avoid any of those 2-mile sections that were just really rough.
We'll get onto the route a bit in the planning because we've got like a layout we want to go through of how we set the goal, how you set the goal up, and trained 8 in some degree or another, and then how we can talk about recovery. So we'll go through all of that in there. Yeah.
So I would change that, just that trying to go around those sections if possible.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would change was there was something else. Probably just like conditioning my feet a little bit more.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that endurance-wise, mindset, I knew you had it. The only thing I was worried about when it was coming up to was actually how your feet going to take it.
Considering everything, my feet,
the
bottom of my feet are in a pretty good state.
Yeah.
I've got like a cut that's bothering me on like one of my like middle toes.
Yeah, it's kind of in between your toes. You've got a couple of cuts, but I was surprised when I rocked up there and waiting through a pen of iron where I eventually did meet you. the bottom, the skin on your feet looked like no worse than someone's palms after they've been climbing for like hours. Like you weren't even like calloused. Like you had like just the outer layer of skin was kind of just gone. Like the dead skin was kind of gone. You had like no cuts or grazes on the actual pad of the foot. So going back to the question we had earlier about like what was the condition of your feet like, it was pretty bloody good for what you'd done.
Yeah. Yeah, so like considering all of that, like, do I really need to change much more?
But in between your toes, that was so you always get some surprise comes up, and in between your toes apparently was it.
That was pretty rough, just from like all the little bits like sticking up between your toes. To callus in between your toes is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So
But you got.
I had no calluses.
Because you know that mountain kind of grass is really like stringy as well. Do you find that might have cut it a bit too?
No, I don't think it was that. I think it was like there's loads of just spiky bushes and you're constantly stepping on twigs and there's always stuff going in between your toes. So like something just like cut it, and then every step you take, every time something goes in between it, especially the last sort of 10 miles,
Yeah.
it was just horrible.
So if someone is going to walk barefoot 50 mile, your advice would be callus in between your toes.
My advice would be don't do it.
Yeah, well, that's the one I normally say, but I'm coming to realise that I'm bored of saying it.
This is what I always say. As someone that coaches and trains people, and they look at me doing this stupid stuff, and they think, oh, if he trains me, he's going to get me trying to do stupid stuff. And I'm like, no, I would not program this for 99% of the people that I train.
Yeah.
Like, there's obviously, like, there's going to be someone out there who's got the stupid mindset that we've got to do this stuff, and they're the only people that I would train for these things.
Yeah.
But I would not force this on anyone.
No, I never. I'd always encourage people to go beyond their comfort zone. Like the amount of people that come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I could never do that." I'm like, "Well, I'm just an ordinary guy." I'm like, "You probably could do it if you trained for it." And I'm kind of that mindset that people have a lot more untapped potential in them. But then the more I coach people and work with people who are in that fitness kind of community now, I do see there's definitely a clear cut kind of mindset approach coming into it that is like a make or break for some people, because everyone's probably got the physical potential to actually do a lot of crazy shit, even if it's not necessarily on the same scale. I think everyone could run a marathon in theory, give or take what hand you dealt with when you're born. But
yeah, there's going to be outliers, but
of course
generally,
I mean, if you've got something like a muscular waist condition, or you've had to have like maybe your ankle's been fused, the hand you dealt with at birth. But if you were born with, let's say, like a more typical body, because we don't like the word normal in strength conditioning. So Coach Jack, spell it to around in the future, he said it to me once before where he used the word normal when he was describing something in training, and he said, actually no, he said screw that, he said don't like the word normal, and he says typical. I knew exactly what he'd meant, and ever since that day, I've always used the word typical instead, and I 100% got it, and it's really resonated with me. So, like I say, if you're born with a typical body, then I think everyone's got the potential to actually run a marathon, or even, an ultra marathon. But I think the mindset thing is very different, because some people I can push with their mindset, trying to get them to grow over and over, and I can try every approach, and some people are just resilient to change. You've got to want it for yourself to do it. And that isn't something that I can gift to you, or Will can gift to you, or anyone can gift to you. That is something you've got to give yourself. You've got to be willing to give it to yourself.
Yeah. I think we spoke about that in one of our last podcasts, saying about most people who want to make a change have to go through something really bad for the change to be less uncomfortable than what they're going through.
I remember we said something along the lines of, like me and you had to go to the extreme end of the spectrum to actually get that change. And almost because of that, we've yo-yoed back to the other end of the spectrum now. So that's kind of like the balance of it, is that we've gone, instead of just going back to, we'll just be fit and healthy. It's like, no, we want to do hardcore shit for charity. Like Greek gods. But we're saying that, it's not too late for everyone now to actually change. If you're not at that far end, you don't want to get to that far end. Believe me, it's not good. But if you do get there, don't think life is over, because not only have you got the potential to bounce back, but you got the potential to bounce back even harder than other people because of that resilience you're going to build.
Yeah.
Speaking of mindset then, let's have a look at another Instagram question around mindset. Was there any point where you wanted to give up? And in those moments, what was it that kept you going? And I think this is quite an interesting one, especially what kept you going, because we had a couple of chats about this prior to it, didn't we?
Yeah. So there was one main point where I really wanted to give up. And that was that 2 mile section that I was on about. After I finished that was the first time Jake came out to support us. So I sat down. Jake was recording some interview stuff with me, and I just kept like joking about with the boys, being like, "Oh, is it too late to change this to a 30-mile walk, boys? Who's gonna know? Who's gonna care? Who else is doing it?" And then I was like, "Yeah, I could just say I was doing a marathon barefoot," and I kept coming up with these things in my head. Like, obviously, to the boys, it sounded like a joke, but I was seriously like,
Do you
no,
think it
I
was
don't
like
want to
going-
do this anymore.
I was gonna say, like Freudian slip, you know, you accidentally slip something out, and it's subconsciously like that's what you want.
No, that's I
Oh,
was
this is conscious
genuinely,
though. Yeah,
I was genuinely just like, boys, can I just quit? And they were like, I mean, you can, but like, why would you? And then I'm like,
can, but
I'm
we're
in a
not gonna
lot
allow
of
you.
pain. Everyone was fine for me to quit.
Yeah.
No one was like, no, go on, like, give it your everything. It's like, if it's that hard for you, then no one's making you do
think
it.
When you have the ambition to just set one of these goals that people are already like, Jesus Christ, that's insane that you just would attempt it and set it for yourself. And then you're actually there on the day when you've surpassed, you know, you far surpassed what the average person is going to do when you get into these. Like, we were like 30 miles at that point.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, Jesus, like, you've gone past a marathon at this point with barefoot. So people are like, yeah, that's pretty incredible, that feat. Nobody's going to knock you if you don't hit that 50 mile, because it is ambitious what we're setting out to do at the end of the day.
I would have knocked me. If someone came up to me being like, I'm going to do a 50-mile barefoot walk, and then they finish and they haven't done a 50-mile barefoot walk, and they're not planning on going back and doing it again, I'd have been like, well, it's cool and everything, but it's not what you said you was going to do.
I had that a little bit with the yoke, but it was because my original goal was a half marathon, and then 2 weeks before I doubled the distance to the full marathon. I knew, like, physically my body wasn't ready to do that distance yet. I just didn't have the conditioning for it. But it was when I just sit down with Josh, as I said before, and I kind of thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to double it. And I knew my body wouldn't take it, but I knew mentally I could push way further than the half. Like, I knew we were probably at the half in the bag, so I wanted to push beyond that. And at the end of the day, it was just the sun and just the lack of conditioning that weathered my body down to the point where... So, speaking of mindset, there's this point in marathons and ultras in particular where you see people can't physically stand anymore. And I was actually I was in that point where... It doesn't matter how tough your mindset is at some points, because, as I said, I knew you had the mindset to do this, so I didn't worry about it at all. I knew you had the endurance as well. It was the feet I was worried about. There are points where your body will limit what you can do in physiology, and you will not be able to fight back anymore. It will take the kill switch like that on a motorbike and just turn it off.
See, I wasn't worried about my feet. I knew that I could push through the pain on my feet.
Yeah.
What I was worried about was the endurance, because... Since I broke my ankle in 2020,
yeah,
I haven't really done that much endurance training. Before, I was fine. Afterwards, I've really struggled getting back into endurance, to the point where in the past sort of 2.5 years, the furthest distance I've covered is 10 miles. And that was hard. So to then go from doing 10 miles to doing 50 miles is like a massive...
It is
massive
massively,
jump.
yeah.
So
huge.
that's what I was concerned about. And mixing that with the difference in elevation I thought that was going to be what killed me.
And if we want to talk about it in the more sports science perspective as well, endurance training, you lose very quickly. It builds up very quickly, but you lose it very quickly. Whereas, like, you can go 2 weeks of strength training, and only then will you start to atrophy like a tiny bit of strength. The same, like, I think muscle might even be even further. You need very little amount to actually maintain muscle mass and strength once you've got it as well. I think it's something crazy low, like 2 sets per muscle group per week or something like that, just to maintain, as long as the intensity's there. But I mean, no one wants to just maintain until, there's certain points in life where just maintenance training is good. But to come back to the more sports science approach, to when I was talking about mindset a minute ago. So if we want to talk about that point where we physically can't go anymore, which is what I was worried about with your feet, was you have some people who run an ultra, and let's take 50 miles as just a great example because that's what you did. And they'll get to mile 49, and you know they've got the mindset to do it. Like, they've done 49 miles. They can push themselves over that finish line, and then they will just drop like a sack of potatoes. I was going to say a sack of shit, but I like food, so. And they'll drop, and they can't walk anymore. They physically, like, every time they just stand up, they, like jelly like, they keep falling over, and other people have got to physically pick them up and help them cross that finish line. And it's not because of their mindset. It comes to a point where, so if we talk of fuel very quickly in the body, glycogen, carbon, fat, protein, but not really a good protein's not a good source of fuel. It's a good structure. Then so there's three main sort of sources of storages of glycogen, essentially. So it's in the muscle, which is we're going to use it when you're strength training. You can use some of it up when you're running as well, though you're going to rely more on using oxygen and fat as fuel. But you're going to deplete your glycogen levels. Once you deplete them in the muscle tissue, it's going to go to the blood next. I think they call it lipid, the lipid glycogen stores, which glycogen's got loads of different names. It's essentially carbohydrate, sugars. We call it fructose in fruit, or starches when it's in things like tubers, like potatoes. But we call it glycogen when it's stored in the muscle. It's called something else when it's stored in the blood. But once you use that in the muscle, you're going to use it with us in the blood. After that, then, you get into the liver. As soon as you start tapping into that liver supply of energy, that is when the liver gives the brain that kill switch, and that's when the legs shut off, and it doesn't matter how much you drive your willpower over it, your body is just turned off. And you can try to stand up, but the actual signal to the legs to actually keep walking is like, we're going to die if we keep doing this. Let's just stop. It's better to lie down for 3 hours and just let that energy recuperate a little bit, or just to preserve some sort of energy so we're here 3 hours from now, because if we keep this up, your brain just thinks we're not going to be there. Yeah. So that's what I was worried about with you, because I knew, so sometimes the mind over muscle approach, as much as I love it, because I'm very much of that mentality too, I'm very interested in sports science and neurology. So for me, it's how to kind of use these systems and understanding the body to train more intelligently. And then when you come to the event day, to be able to actually, because I love being in that same place where you're pushing the mindset and you're really breaking through barriers and like shattering your ego to pieces. But I find that if you give yourself the right kind of setup nutritionally for that, then you can get to that place where you can really shatter your walls down. But if you don't prepare enough, like say you went out and, because we were chatting a lot about food, weren't we, on the run up to this, because we were a bit concerned with your fueling, because you had to kind of train yourself up to eat more for the event. If you didn't do that, you might have crashed earlier. You might not have got to that same place to push your mindset. Like that 2 miler, you might have broke on that if you didn't have enough fuel.
Yeah, probably. I don't like eating when I do stuff.
No, we'll get into that in a bit, because we are, as I said, we can do that breakdown of setting, designing, training, nutrition, or lack thereof, and some other bits. Let's grab another Instagram question. So, what was most difficult then, physically or mentally? What was the hardest part of it, or both? Because for me, there's no separation. I think they shouldn't be separated, mind and body, too much.
I mean, in terms of how I thought it was going to break down, I thought that my endurance and specifically my strength endurance to keep walking over mountains, I thought that was what's going to go. But my legs were fine the whole time. There was no point where I was like, oh, my quads are hurting. Like, that wasn't even a thing.
The worst thing was your ankle, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I thought that was gonna break down. Then I thought it was gonna be just sort of my mentality, because I haven't had a great mentality just in life since I broke my ankle. So I thought that would be the second sort of cause of stopping. It's just like, what's the point? I'm giving up.
Well, clearly that was wrong.
Yeah. And then that was close though. That was a close one.
Which is good because you want to be in that little stress zone.
And then I thought it was going to be my feet last, but out of all three of those, the mindset was the most likely to have caused me to stop.
Yeah.
But that was all due to an injury. So when I broke my ankle, like I said, the furthest I've gone on that ankle is 10 miles.
Was this the same ankle that was hurting?
No, this is what I'm getting to.
Ah.
So I thought my ankle was going to go at some point in the walk.
Yeah.
Just not before it. I didn't even consider it before it. But during the walk, I kept getting these little twinges and I'm like, that's going to be sore.
Yeah.
And then I was like, maybe that's what's going to stop me, because I've had it before where I've tried doing stuff and that has completely stopped me, because all the ligaments and stuff are still healing. I haven't done rehab for ages on it like I probably should have done, but it's at the point where I can function and do sport, so I haven't been too concerned. But doing endurance stuff, that's why I stopped doing endurance stuff, was because my ankle, when I wouldn't be able to walk for a few days after. So then during the walk, I sort of remembered that because I was getting those same feelings. And then on that 2 mile stretch where I was going on all those rocks, that was really horrible. My other ankle started hurting and I just sort of like pushed through and I was like, oh, it's just a pain. At first I thought it was shin splints because there was just this stabbing pain going up my shins. It wasn't shin splints because it's not on the bone, it's actually running up the muscle. I figured out when I sat down, and then after I'd sat down and rested, I did that interview with Jake, and I was really wanting to stop. The reason why I was wanting to stop was because I tried moving my ankle after sitting down, and I could barely stand up. I tested my range of motion, and I literally had none.
It locks up, doesn't it?
It was just completely gone. I've still can't lift my toes up. So there's something wrong with my tibialis anterior.
So you have to do a bit of rehab on that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get that looked at.
We'll take everyone through that as well. That little journey of recovery.
Yeah. So after that, I just taped it up with just some climbing tape and did my interview. And then I was like, I don't know if I can do this. The next bit was going over this massive mountain. And I was like, I don't know if I can deal with going up if I can't even move my ankle.
Yeah.
I ended up just moving, and the more I moved and just kept my foot where it was, so I was just doing all the work from my knee and my hip, then the more I was like, okay, I can keep going. The downhills were the worst because then you like have to...
You have to flex the ankle, don't you?
Yeah, it's just... To stop yourself falling on your face eccentrically, that's contracting, and that killed. So most of the time I was trying to go down the downhill sideways, to try and overcome that. But that was probably like the hardest part, was dealing with that injury. And then since then, my other ankle started hurting more because it was compensating more for the injury, and now that's the ankle that's not right.
So I got two questions based off of that. One's a mindset one, and then I've got a sports and training one. So let's do the sports one first, then we'll come back to the mindset one, because I've got some more mindset questions as well, which we can hop into after that. So in terms of training, and because we're quite about being able to train anywhere for anything, and accessibility to equipment, do you think if you had access to something like a sled, that it might have actually helped you bulletproof those ankles better on the run up to it? Because where you train in your own house. You've got your home gym, which you've got some good kit here. You've got like you've got a couple of bars, you've got a trap bar, you've got dip bars, you've got rings, you've got a lot of rock climbing stuff, and you've also got the what's it called, the one that's right behind me in the wall there.
Oh, the Nordic bench.
Yeah, the Nordic bench. So you've got some really good like rehab, prehab kit here for strength and conditioning. But do you think a sled might have been a bit more sport specific for getting that ankle nice and strong?
Probably. It's something that I really wanna get. I love sleds, but
I love a sled.
Yeah, I'm in a home gym in a flat, so I can't really get a sled.
But how do you find that, like that accessibility? Because obviously what we want to do with adventure athletes at that more, if you're looking to really push yourself level, we want to be able to train you to be able to do anything. there is a certain point where access to equipment becomes quite a big limiting factor.
I mean, there's ways around it. Like skipping helps
Yeah,
massively.
skipping's
If
really
I'd done
good.
more just ankle stability work, if I'd done more tib raises and calf raises and doing stuff to do with rotation of the ankles,
Yeah.
if I had done more just going up into the hills and doing walking, like all of those things would have helped in there.
Do you mean if you'd adhered to your training program a bit more?
Yeah, yeah. If I'd stuck to a training program, then it would have helped.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
So do you think? So if you became more specific to 50-mile walking barefoot, it would have been easier.
Yeah.
So the classic Myra Croton story we talked about before, and then the mindset one based off of that is so during those 2 miles where you wanted to give up, what was going on upstairs in your head? Like take us inside your head. What was happening? What was that narrative saying?
For me, I just wanted to get to the next point. You could, I didn't know this, but when we was walking down, like a mile in, you could pretty much see where the next point was.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where the next point was. One, because my tracking was off.
Yeah.
And then secondly, because Sam was convinced. You could see like we was going over this mount, like it was like going over a hill into this little valley bit, and then it goes up
Yeah.
over the next mountain. And Sam was saying the car park where we was meeting Jake was over the next mountain. So in my head, I had like five or six more miles of this terrain.
Wow.
And I was like, I want to get it over with. And I kept trying to find ways around it, but there was no proper way around it. So you just had to walk along it, and it was just really slow, painful 2 miles. But I was convinced it was in that little valley, which it ended up being in that valley, which
Yeah.
is great.
So did you have a lot of doubt then at that time?
I didn't really know what was going on. I was like, I just need to get to the next point so then I can sit down, have some food, and then decide if I'm going to give up or not.
Yeah. Do you find that perception of what's ahead of you makes a massive difference in terms of actual performance in the moment as well?
I always struggle to answer that because I never really look at the long term. I'm just like, I just want to like get to the next point. I just want to take a few more steps.
Because perception of fatigue and exhaustion are very weird things. Because there's loads of studies on it where you'll take someone and like just fuck around with their perception of exhaustion by changing what's in front of them in terms of fatigue. In fact, you've actually done a live demonstration of this on a stage, which we'll hop into that story because it's quite cool. And there's also loads of studies that actually indicate that our own perception of fatigue is very poor. And I actually see this. It's quite interesting because I think you can train that perception of fatigue. I think you can train your mind for anything really. But I see it quite a lot now in Broward where I coach, where people have been training for a good few years who are strict on the bar. Like they're the ones who come in and they actually want to make progress each session. They are quite accurate at diagnosing things like perceived rate of exertion for themselves, like how many reps do I have in reserve, or how many, if I was like, how many more reps could you have done? And then I'll actually, some people I'm like, oh, well, go for one more, go for another one. And then some people come in new, they've never strength trained before. Their perception of fatigue is awful. I had a lady come in who actually told me she could do 2 more reps on, I think it was an 8-rep squat. And then I just kept going, just give me another one. Just give me one more. And we ended up actually doubling it, taking it up to 16 reps, and she still had way more in the tank. She probably could have gone to like 25 reps easily. But I was like, oh, let's just call it there. But I think that perception of your own... So if she would have limited herself at only 2 more reps, and she would have bought that bar and said, I'm done, when she probably could have gone for like 4 or 5 times that volume easily.
Yeah.
So, your story then, where you got to demonstrate to a live audience your... rate of exertion, or rather your rate of fatigue. Let's dive in.
I was the worst person for him to pick for that, but
yeah,
should
pick me. I show us there.
I went to a live Ross Edgley show after he just finished his swim.
Should we just tell everyone who Ross Edgley is very quickly, in case they don't know?
He's
Like,
he's
to
a
me-
wannabe adventure athlete, but
Yeah.
he's not. So he calls himself a hybrid athlete. What's that about? Like,
Yeah, what's that about? just pick more sports to do. Stop swimming.
no. So Ross is probably one of the inspirations for both of us to get into
Oh yeah.
this sort of stuff. So he's swum around Britain. He's pulled a car doing a
A
marathon.
mini around Silverstone racetrack.
He did the Everest rope climb. He's just done lots of sick stuff.
Wasn't like 1,000 miles a month barefoot with a 50-kilo Bergen on as well on the road.
It was. I thought it was 30 marathons in 30 days.
Oh, maybe that was it. Yeah, he did it by Vivo barefoot, didn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's Oh, and he did the 48-hour swim as well on the Royal Marines thing, and he did attempt, I think, he did the triathlon, which that one for me rings a lot, which was a triathlon with a tree. I think it was like a 50-pound or 100-pound log attached to him, which is quite interesting in terms of biomechanics, like how do you carry a tree on a bike? He did the sea swim attempt for the longest sea swim up in the loch, but I think that went a bit south. I didn't really catch that online. I just seen he was in hospital after it went a bit south, so I think he's retraining for that now. But I think for me and you, big inspiration. I think Goggins rings true to. If I was to line you with one of the existing athletes, I'd put Goggins with you because you're very into the mindset. Whereas I flipped over.
Talking of Goggins, I find this really funny. On the second day when I was with Sam, and I had no energy, like we'd just got up. It was like 5:30, 6 in the morning. We started walking. It was actually really cold.
Yeah.
Neither of us brought any warm clothes because we was like, it's boiling. We're in the middle of a heat wave. So it got to the point where Sam was walking with his sleeping bag wrapped round him. He was that cold, and we was just walking. And we stopped off. Sam had some food. He cooked himself some noodles. And afterwards, he was like, "Oh, I feel great." And he's like walking off, and I'm just there like, I'm dying. I wish I hadn't stopped. My ankle's locking up. I feel really bad.
It's hard to get going when you stop, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I just, as a joke, because I always do this as a joke, especially like round Sam and that, is I started going for a bit of run, and I was just going, "They don't know me, son. Who's gonna carry the logs and the boats?" And then like I just got into this mindset, and I was just like, it was gonna be like a 10-meter jog just past Sam.
Yeah.
And I just kept going, and I was like, "Yeah, Goggins is coming out now. Let's go."
Do you know what mine was on the yoke? Who's gonna carry the yokes? You know, if you actually go on the Vale of Glamorgan on the coastal path and go for a run, someone has gone around and slapped David Goggins stickers on like every post that says who's going to carry the boats. I love it because I try to run there a lot with Bergen, so I see that and I'm like, yeah, David Goggins, sweet. But anyway, back to Ross.
So away from Taylor's Tangents, we're going to have a segment called Taylor's Tangents. I hope you know this.
Podcast, it should be Taylor's Tangents. So, you went to this live...
So I went to this live Ross Edgley show. I actually cycled there as well. So I cycled there. My legs were a bit dead when I got there.
How long was the cycle?
I don't know.
Just give us a time.
Things.
Like
I don't know. I just cycled.
Oh, you just cycled there.
Yeah.
I mean, where was the show? Was this when you were living?
It was in Cardiff Bay.
All right, and you were living in Caerphilly at the time still, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So Caerphilly to Cardiff.
Yeah. So I cycled there. Over Caerphilly Mountain. Legs were a little bit dead. I wasn't conditioning for cycling at the time. And I sat down. I was watching his show. I went on my own. I sat in the front row on my own, like a bit of a sado, just a little table.
I wish we'd known each other back then. I could have come with you.
Yeah. So I was sat there watching him. And he does his sports science experiments on stage.
Yeah.
And the first one, he's like, "Oh, who wants to come up, be my volunteer?" No one knew what it was. And I was like, "Oh, he's not going to pick me." And he kept being like, "Oh, who's gonna come up?" And after he asked 3 times, I sort of looked round, being like, "I haven't put my hand up because I don't think he's going to pick me." So I looked round because I was at the front and it was dark behind me. I had no idea. No one had their hand up. And then I was just like, "Oh, me?" And he was like, "Oh, thank you." Pulled me up on stage, and he was like, "I want you to hold this 24-kilo kettlebell at the bottom of a goblet squat. Just sit there, bottom of a squat, holding this kettlebell." So I was like, "All right, okay." And then he was like, "And then just let me know when you think like you can't do any more, and we'll stop." And then he starts talking about like rate of perceived exertion, and if you've got a goal, like you can keep pushing towards it. If you think it's like, say it's like 10 more steps, like
Yeah.
when you think you can give up on a marathon, it'd be like, oh, can you do 10 more steps? Then you'd be like, I can do 10 steps, and then rather than looking at it, it'd be like, I've still got like 10 miles to go. It's like, oh, 10 steps, I can do that. And then after those 10, you're like, oh, I could do 10 more. So then I was sat at this bottom of the squat, and he kept turning to me and being like, oh, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm good. And then he'd keep talking, and then he'd be like, oh, yeah, 15 more seconds. I'm like, yeah, cool. Just sat there chilling with his kettlebell. My legs are burning.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, 10 more seconds.
Was this like a deep squat or just like a mid squat hold?
Like mid squat.
Yeah, because if it's rest and squat, you can go all day if you've got the mobility.
Yeah, I didn't have the mobility.
No,
Anyway.
you're not that mobile, are you?
No. So then he just kept being like, oh, yeah, 5 more seconds. And he would take like 30 seconds, and then he'd be like, yeah, 5 more. And I was like, no, I'm fine.
Do you think there's a point where you got past where it no longer went from like this builds and burn is building and building? You just get to a point where you're like, actually, I can just hang and I can exist in this headspace.
it was just burning.
Just
but
agony.
like, I wasn't gonna stop.
No.
And then
Not
like
for
it got
us,
to
no.
the point where he didn't have anything more to say.
Yeah.
And then he was like, yeah, you can be done now. And I was like, no, I'm all right. And I just stayed on stage for like another 2 minutes.
That was
just holding this squat.
That was the first public announcement of Adventure Athlete before it even existed. You're like, look, we can do this, boy.
So then, yeah, after a while, he was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, I've probably just ruined your show, ain't I?
He'll hate you for that.
Well, he said thank you and everything, and he was like, oh, thank you so much, and all of that. And I was like, oh, cool.
Probably check the kettlebell at you. He could do as well. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you find that... So, to break that down then, what we had there was those little chunking techniques of time where... this is quite something with the Royal Marines in terms of...
This is what I was saying. Look, those chunking techniques work for majority of people.
Yeah.
That doesn't... I don't think that affects me that much because I just know I'm just going to go anyway.
Yeah, you're just going to go. But in terms of... Yeah, but we're not talking to people who are in the same, messed, twisted shoes as you necessarily sometimes when it comes to that endurance mindset. But if we're looking at kind of more, the average triathlete, how can we use that example to help others, do you think?
I think what that demonstrates is a good need to find your 1 rep max or 1 rep max equivalent.
Yeah.
And then work off of percentages off that, and build up that sort of...
But what if we're talking about endurance?
For endurance...
Because this was an endurance example. This wasn't 1 RPMs. He just gave you a 24 kilo kettlebell and said squat, boy. And you squatted. And you held.
For endurance, then I just think have like those mini goals of like, I'll just get like, if you're doing a marathon or like an endurance event like that, there's always going to be checkpoints along the way. So just mentally being like, I just have to get to the next checkpoint, and then I'm in a safe place where I can give up if I need to.
Yeah.
And then at that point, just question, could I get to the next checkpoint? Because I did that in my ultra. Like every point I got to, I was like, I want to quit. And then I was like, I just want to get to the next checkpoint.
Do you think there's something to be said of having overly ambitious goals when you're in the middle of it, if you keep focusing on the finish line? If you started off and on the first mile all you thought about was stepping over the 50th, do you think you would have done it versus if you just focused on mile to mile?
I mean, it's different for me because... For me, like I said, I'm doing these for the mentality side of things. So in my head, it's not about that end result. That end result is just some way of tracking it.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like, I'm going to set something that I don't know if I can do it or not. And then I'm going to either finish it or I'm going to find my limit.
Yeah.
And that's it for me. I'm going to keep going until... my body or my brain gives up on me.
Yeah.
So like all the numbers, all the sort of metrics are just irrelevant in my eyes for me.
Yeah.
And this is why I do these challenges. Is I'm not doing it being like, oh, I'm gonna do this because no one's done it, or I'm gonna do this and be better than people, or
Yeah.
like have any of that. It's just like, oh, that sounds really hard. I'm just gonna see how close I can get to doing that and see where my limits are.
See, as much as I set up with the sports science aspect of it, and I love the training for these events and the sports science side of it, but
Yeah, we're very different.
when it comes to the actual event day, it is having that experience no one's had before for me, and seeing how that can break me. And so it's finding the mental limit and breaking it and seeing if you can go past it, and almost trying to set like a new baseline for yourself. I find after the event, it's never what you expect. These events, like what it's going to be, like the fatigue, the place your mind's going to go, and the way you feel afterwards. It's never what you thought it was going to be. And afterwards, because we talk about this kind of Herculean journey as well of becoming better through like casting aside the ego and breaking certain things, that it's like it changes your baseline after you've done the events in terms of what you can handle and tolerate in life, but not in the ways you suspected. I found when I first set the events, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be this hard ass after I finish it. Like, I'm going to be like rock solid and stoic and all that. But I've actually found since with every event I do, I feel more soft and gentle as a person outside of them. I feel a lot more warm and empathetic and relaxed and peaceful myself after I finish an event. And I don't find that there's any sort of like this toughness. If anything, my exterior has kind of softened and I feel a lot more welcoming to people, and I feel a lot warmer in myself now having done these things. And it's almost like the need to be cold and hard is just reserved for those moments now. And I find that the baseline of dealing with every day is so much easier, but it's not in the way I ever thought it would be when I first set off to do these.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't have that idea in my head that I need to be like this cold, strong person.
No.
Um,
But surely you have an idea that after you finish one of these events, you are going to be improved in some capacity with that experience under your belt, or you're at least going to be shaped by it. You're not going to be the same person after you finished it in some aspect, but not massively.
yeah, I don't tend to think about that at all. Really, I just trying to find my limit and trying to, yeah, just it's just all constant improvement. I don't think the improvement comes from the event. I think the improvement comes like prior, and the fact that you're even setting out to do it. I think that's where my improvement comes from.
So nothing happens overnight, does it?
No.
No. But
There's
it's
no-
that from day one of having the idea to actually completion and reflection of it, you've shifted the person you are in different parts of your character. But I think they change in subtle ways that you don't necessarily
But
notice.
I think there's
until later.
always going to be these changes. It's just
Well, we'll go first, and I'll give you a good example then.
yeah. So I think as people, you're always changing,
Yeah,
and if you're not actively trying to change to be a specific way, then change is going to happen to you,
Yeah.
not for you. That's how I see it, and I'm like, I want this change to go on this path, and then everything else just goes towards that path. And it's no like this big event's changing me. It's like this is just a step along that path.
it's just another stone on the journey. So my question is then, if I came to you as a client, came to the Adventure Athletes, my life is in total fucking chaos. My wife has just left me. She's run off with someone. She's taken the car. My kids fucking hate me. I'm out of shape. I've got a drinking problem. I keep lying to myself about popping to McDonald's every day on the way to work for a big McMuffin, a Big Mac on the way home, and things are just they're hitting rock bottom, pretty fucked. And I come to you and I'm like, right, I want to get my shit together, and I want to set a challenge to do. It hasn't necessarily going to be the same level of athleticism, but I want to set myself my own little adventure athlete challenge. Say it's like I'm going to do 10 kilometers carrying, I don't know, I'm gonna carry a barbell for 10 kilometers, like that, something like that. Or I'm gonna do a 10-kilometer farmer's carry. So it's not that same huge ultra level, but it's like that is my personal challenge I want to achieve. How do you think the process of coming in and starting from that to who you are the other side would kind of remold you a little bit as a person?
I think the main benefit that comes from these challenges is the fact that you said you're going to do something and then you do it. You're building that trust in yourself. You're building that resilience by just doing what you say you're going to do. And that's going to come in like very little steps along the process. You're not going to go from that to just doing this challenge. It's going to be like, right, I've set this challenge. What's going to allow me to get there?
Yeah.
First things first, I need to start training. Right, what time am I going to train tomorrow? I'm going to get up at 7 in the morning. I'm going to do a half-hour session, whether that's just like walking for half hour. If you get up when you said you're going to get up and you do what you say you're going to do, you're starting to build that trust in yourself. And then with that trust comes the belief that like you're in control of what's happening.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't get up and you don't do that session and you push things back, then you're neglecting yourself. And that's when life's happening to you and you're not controlling life. I think that's the biggest thing, is having all those little steps to build trust in yourself, to make that like big change, make that big challenge achievable for you. And that's where the change like will happen.
Yeah.
That's in my head, that's all the change is you're just believing in yourself and trusting yourself, because you're doing the actions, you're doing the things you say you're going to do.
Do you think there's, when you begin that as well, there's a level of like honest accountability, vulnerability and acceptance you have to start off with as well when you come in and set this?
Yeah, and taking away the victimhood of it all, of like, oh, woe is me, life is happening to me, it's really unfair. It's like, well, yeah, it's unfair for everyone. Everyone's got their own demons, everyone's got things going on.
Yeah.
Everyone's level of those things are different, and how we respond to them is different, and the effect it has on you in your life is completely different. No one's like saying that that's not as bad as this or whatever, because everyone's levels of acceptance is different for it all.
Yeah. Do you think for this person then, so let's call him Steve, because that's like just a general dude's name, Steve. So say Steve's come to you and he's on this journey. Do you think that the path from average, well, if you're that fucked, it might not even be average anymore, but like sub average, where you just, things are fucked, shit's hit the fan, and you want to go to this place, and say we're like, right, we're gonna give ourselves 10 months to do this project. Do you think that that's quite a healing process for someone like that?
Oh, massively. And I'm saying this from experience, because I've been through it all, going from my journey from what I'm calling homeless to Hercules.
Yeah.
That is the biggest part of this whole thing, is the fact that I said I'm doing these 12 hard challenges, and especially now that I've ticked one off, I've got that belief that I've made that change in my life.
Yeah.
And that's been massive for me. That's helped me get through loads already, just by saying that I'm going to do it and starting putting the actions in. And when I say I'm going to do stuff and then I don't do it, because I'm still bad for it. I still don't do everything I say I'm going to do, as you know, with my training
you're
plans.
Human.
I mess this up constantly. But the more that I do these things that I say I'm going to do, the more trust I'm building, and then the more accountability I'm having, and the more I'm doing those things. So say at first I was doing like 1% of all the things I said I was going to do, feeling horrible about myself. I'm really depressed. My life's shambles. And again, this came through therapy. Is like, I started off being like, I'm going to actually try and look after myself today. I'm going to just go and take a shower. It's something as simple as that. And then actually going and doing it. If I just went and did that thing, I would feel better because I've done the thing I said I'm going to do. And then the next day I might be like, right, so I'm going to shower and I'm going to get out of bed earlier.
The power of the to-do list.
Yeah, it's just having that thing that you said and you just do it. It's like, it sounds simple, but it is that simple.
It is
It's not easy.
When you break everything down with these, that it's just made of thousands of simple steps.
Yeah, it's really not easy. Like I said, I'm probably about 50-50 at the moment of doing the things I say I'm going to do. So it's still difficult. I'm still struggling. I'm not in like the place I want to be mentally, despite like outwardly like I'm in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
Like internally there's still that struggle going on. But it's getting better and I'm taking control of it.
Yeah. Would you, or would it be accepting it rather than taking control?
No, I think it's taking control, because if I just accepted it, then I would still be in that bad place.
But
Because
I
I've
mean
been
that-
in that place of acceptance before, where it's like, this is all happening to me.
No, but just accept that within you there's always going to exist that struggle. You could get 99% of the list done, and there's still going to be that 1% is going to shout very loud still.
But I don't think it's about accepting it, because like if you just accept it, you're not doing anything about it. Whereas I'm actively trying to do something about it.
Yeah, but there's also that flip side of the coin, to play devil's advocate here, where if you, because it's impossible to get 100% of everything done.
Yeah.
You know, like there will come a point where you need to cut out not just the things you don't like to just pursue what you want. You're gonna have to cut out the things you do like. And when you get to this point where you could say you're getting 90, say you've got a list of 100 items in a day or like a week, and you smash in 99 of them, but you just can't get the final one done, and it's just not happening no matter how much effort you're putting into life. It just physically isn't happening. You're still going to beat yourself up over it. Just then there's a point of you accept that, not so much like, oh, I'm not doing anything about it, but there's always going to be that conflict for more inside of you.
Well, there is, but that's life.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If you're not thinking like that, of like there's always more to do, and you think you've done everything, then you're not living.
No,
you're not pushing yourself.
You're not adventuring.
Because you're just like, oh, I've done everything, I can relax. There's so much to do in life. There's so many things, and people like always see this in me in my jobs, because I've done so many jobs. They're like, you're a bit young to have had like that many jobs. It's not so much now, but like especially when I was younger, before I got into coaching and realised that's what I want to do, everyone was like, you've had so many jobs, like you're so experienced for someone so young. And I'm like, there's so much to do.
There is.
There's so many jobs out there, there's so many experiences you can have. If you think you're done, then what's the point?
I'm the same. I get bored in the same career. That's why I couldn't just be a coach for like 2 years. It's a coach now. It's like set up adventure athlete, be an athlete. You know, there's always quite a bit going on. Let's pour my coffee. I love coffee. Look at that. That looks good on camera, doesn't it? Oh yeah. But
Stick to my water.
Yeah. Will doesn't like coffee. Or coffee doesn't like Will.
Who knows? I've never had it.
We've never had coffee.
Nope.
I love coffee.
I'm not gonna.
That's one thing as well. Is so there's some things that, like with you know that what's good for you might be following your training program. Sometimes it's like, I know that drinking shit tons of coffee during the middle of an event is probably not the best thing, because it's a diuretic, which doesn't mean you pee more. It just means that you lose more minerals and salt, in terms of coffee at least. For your pee, it's like 4 times more salt. But I'll still neck coffee while I'm doing an event, because I just love it. I just love coffee. It's so good. In fact, when I did the Super Barbarian, because I was playing around with nutrition a lot, one of the things I actually had there was I had a big flask of coffee, that flask, and I had MCT oil in it, so I could just get a little hit of fat during the event. That was like my way of fueling for it. So I was having bulletproof coffee while I was doing the Super Barbarian. It was quite weird.
Nice. Should we go on to nutrition then, since that's the topic right now?
Yeah, why not? We'll go through the setting thing, then we'll come back to those. We've got another 2 questions, ones that I actually want to ask you as well. So we'll go for this in the more like systematic approach then. So we set, first things first, you set the goal. You've already got these 12 goals, the 12 labours of Hercules. We know the backstory of those now. We've been through them in previous episodes. So if you don't know them, just go listen to those episodes, because it's a long story to go through again. So you set 50 miles as a goal, and that was the first one that we've actually come to as the first one completed, because you did attempt the Welsh 3000 as well prior, but you weren't ready for that yet. This was a good one, I think, to start on as well. So You've set that goal. What's the first things first? Now you've got that goal. So you're like, right, I'm gonna do a 50 miler first, barefoot. What's the first thing you go to with that?
First thing I did was plan a route.
Yeah.
I planned a few different options, and like I said, when I ended up scouting it, I didn't end up scouting the whole route by any means, which was my plan over 13 weeks to scout each section, make sure I had it down and knew what I was in for. I did that for maybe about half the route, and then the other half was just winging it.
Broke it into sections, didn't you? 'Cause quite often you would go and walk them during training.
Yeah.
Walk different sections. So you'd set a route first. Then what was your next step after that?
Then was to write the plan.
Yep.
Which we did.
Yep, we got on Zoom or was it Teams?
Some form of video call.
It was, and we just pretty much sat down and built it there and then, didn't we? We had a little think about what equipment you had and how to get sport specific, but also because it's you, we couldn't get too sport specific because you just like, I just want to be great at everything all at once.
Yeah.
I remember before I said to you over text, you basically just want to be Bruce Wayne, and you're like, fuck that, I'll be better than that.
Yeah. He's good at like a lot of things, but I don't see him doing any backflips like.
True. We haven't had a backflip in Batman before. You know, he's a good multifunctional athlete, but I can't backflip.
Well, that's actually I wanted to talk to you about.
I can backflip, but I tend to land on my neck quite a bit.
I want to film a YouTube video teaching you how to do a backflip.
I just do gymnastics, yeah. Cool.
So,
I'm all for that. I'm always down for learning new skills. Gymnastics, I haven't had that. Funny enough, actually, when we did the gymnastics in school, of course I was lumped in set 2 for PE just because I was fat. So they're like, oh, you're just shit at sports. The thing was, I was always apart from running, I was at top of the class for everything. So when we did like swimming, it was always like the depth of the pool determined the grade of like swimmer you were in the class, which was a bit mean, to be honest, like ranking everyone on the sport. But I mean, sometimes that's life. You need a bit of competition. But me and Tom Pritchard, he's pretty tall, long built kind of dude. Like he's built for swimming, and he had hair like yours. He's quite, streamlined. Me and him were paired together at the top of the class, and you had this kid who was like the long, tall, long-limbed, streamlined swimmer, and you had me who was like probably at the time like 5'5", and I was built like a little fat hobbit. It was like just really broad, but I was actually at the top end of the swim in the class, and it was the same then for things that when we did the gymnastics classes, I was actually one of the first ones to do the front flips and stuff as well off the springboards, which was quite funny. So that's the only sort of introduction I've had to doing any of the more acrobatic kind of style sports, because for me then it's just been more functional strength training for years.
Yeah. So, YouTube video teaching Taylor how to backflip.
What can I teach you to do then?
You can't teach me anything.
How to follow a training program from Older a Week. Adherence. Basically, I'll just follow Will around with a whip. That's it. You will adhere. So we've got the goal set.
Yep.
We sit down, we design your strength conditioning program, as well as some of your endurance program, and we kind of schedule your week. Similar approach to how we treat clients, as in we looked at your week first and your availability. We seen what you wanted to train and when, and then kind of we found that like negotiation of like how much time do you have available, how do you want to train, and what should we actually train, and then we set that. We went into more detail on that on, I think it was either our services episode or our first episode. We went in detail about how we go for that process. Then we get into two things that go hand in hand is the training phase, but also the nutrition during the training phase. So back to nutrition now. Now we're going this more systematic build up of the event. How do we jump into that? So we're training now. We've got a program, which is like, was it 4 sessions a week?
3 a week.
And they were full body, yep.
Yep.
And then we had, was it 2 or 3 days of endurance training?
Three endurance days split over sprint, medium, like almost like a tempo run if you was doing a marathon, and then just a hike.
And that was 6 days a week. Yeah.
6 days a week.
And then your rest day was it Monday?
No, Monday was my hike day. My rest day was Saturday because that's my longest coaching day.
Yeah. So, take us through what it was like during the training phase and also the nutrition within the training phase. Because for you, it's going to yo-yo. There's not much to talk about here.
There was a training phase. I just didn't do it.
There wasn't much program adherence at all.
I did 2 weeks adhering to the program,
Then you got
As much as
sick
I
of it.
could. There was a few days where I had to miss sessions, things like that, as
Life
happens
happens.
in every program. Yeah, no one's going to fully stick to a program. That happens, you accept it, you move on, you find ways to deal
I was
with
gonna
it.
say, quick side note, because this is quite a good question. What would you do when you miss a day? Like, what would your advice you'd give someone? Because there's loads of different
Depends
thoughts
on the
this.
program.
Depends.
Very dependent on the program and the lifestyle that they've got.
I was expecting a good mind quote from you, but that is perfect. That's it. Depends is my favorite saying. It really depends.
Yeah, but the two main options are, one, just accept that you've missed it and move on.
Yep.
And then the second one is, if it allows, you push it back and you push the whole program back.
If you can reschedule. Oh, here's a good 3-step approach. Actually, I've just thought of on the spot. If you can't get it on the day, reschedule it for another day that works for your training program, if that suits your goal for the block. The second is to find some negotiation in between. So it's like, well, I can't train today and I can't train tomorrow because this, or tomorrow I'm training anyway. So is there some sort of negotiation? So say I can't do a full hour strength training program with prehab in it, warm up, cool down, and like a down regulation breathing component at the end. Could I do like a half-hour bodyweight program at home very quickly as some sort of negotiation to mitigate some of the effects of that and still hit the kind of key things I'm looking for? And then third, if it isn't just going to happen, it's acceptance, but not beating yourself up about it.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a pretty good approach?
Yeah.
I like
And
that.
then my take on it all is, if you miss one session, fine. Try not to miss 2 sessions in a row.
Yeah, that's very important.
That's the main thing.
It's the same with
That's
any
more
habit.
about habit more than
building.
anything.
Yeah. Especially with strength training, though, because if you're doing a proper strict 3-day program a week and you miss 2, you've missed 66%, 0.66 of your training. So that's pretty important there.
Yeah.
So you did your first, was it 2 to 3 weeks?
So I did like
missed a
2
session
weeks,
or 2 because of
missed
life.
the odd session, and then I then just got sidetracked, did some strength training, mixed it about a lot, did a few different things, and then I was like, oh, it's getting pretty close to the event now. And then that's when I started skipping, still doing all my strength stuff on the side, and then probably 2 days before the event I was like, I'm just not gonna do anything. And then I still did little bits here and there anyway, but more like just doing some gymnastics here and there.
Do you find there's a kind of shift in the way you perceive training when you're training specifically for an event versus when you're just training for the love of training?
I think it's very different, and I think that's why I don't like being told to follow a plan.
Do you think it
because
feels more
I
like
just
a
want
chore?
to jump about and try stuff and do sports, and
Yeah.
that's how I've always been at, like, getting good at certain things. And there are times where I'll get really into a training plan, like when I did Olympic lifting, and then my interest will just shift and I want to do something else.
Do you find that it takes away your kind of ability to express yourself in some capacities because you're very limited in what you can do?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think for anyone who's a very physical person like me and you, movement becomes quite an expressive part of your personality. You're like, I feel like doing this. I feel like creating this, or I feel like creating that. But we're both creatives as well. You know, good with a camera. I'm quite like drawing as well. But like your physicality becomes like an extension of yourself. So like, I feel like Olympic weightlifting. I feel like flowing and moving. Up
I
a
mean,
wall.
other than work, the only thing I really do is train.
Yeah.
So I want to enjoy what I'm doing, and I want to do it. Whereas if I feel like I have to do it, I don't want to do it because I have to.
Yeah.
So I like being good at things, and how I've always got good at things is I probably dive into like a bit of a rabbit hole there, and then I'll go to this other rabbit hole. And I think that makes me a good coach because I've got a lot of experience. Like, I've got a broad experience with the sort of sports science knowledge that will back it all up. Like, I can use my sports science experience with the sort of subtleties of each sport that I've done, because I understand the needs of all the sports and how it feels to be in those positions.
Yeah.
But it does limit me massively as an athlete, because I know I'm not going to be like a Commonwealth Olympic lifter. Like, I'm quite talented, or I used to be very talented at long distance running, because that's what my body's built for. I'm quite tall, long-limbed,
Yeah.
very slow twitch.
Do you know some of the best, saying that though, some of the best actual, I think it's marathon and ultra marathon runners are about 5'8" to 5'9" on average, apparently, which surprised me.
Yeah, doesn't really surprise me, but
less energy.
Yeah, I feel like, because when I did my half marathon, I did a 1:45 half marathon without training.
Yeah,
Like that's most people will train a long time to get there,
whereas
I'm quite gifted to do it. And then there's other people that can go in a gym and deadlift 180 for the first time ever.
Yeah.
But it took me years to get a 180 deadlift.
Is that what we
But
call
I
it, natural
enjoy
talent?
doing the deadlifting and the stuff that I'm bad at more than I enjoy doing the stuff that I'm good at, even though I'll go in and out of things. And that's what, like I was saying, that will make me a better coach because I've got that wider experience. But I'm not going to be the best athlete ever.
Yeah, you got to explore more in your training.
I could quite easily go into just dedicating all of my training into running and doing all these endurance things, but I don't want to.
That's hyper specialization in just one area.
Yeah,
it's not for me and you.
No,
that's kind of a lot of our bread and butter.
That's the adventure athletes.
Is diversification, and it's like, why do you need to be so specialized?
I get it. Like, people want to specialize, and I have so much respect for those people, but that's just not what I want to do.
When I'm talking about not specializing, then I'm not on about people who just go in the gym. They don't really know exactly what they want in the gym, but they kind of like to have a goal. Like, I want big biceps. And it's probably...
See, I'm on about more like actual athletes.
Oh,
I've got so much respect for athletes who just pick a sport and they're like, that's my sport and I'm dedicating everything to this. That's probably like more mentally hard than what we do.
Yeah, that's... I don't know.
I think it is, because like the mundanity of it is what would kill me off.
It's boring.
It's going
in like that.
Every like an Olympic lifter. I really want to get Jordan Sakas on this podcast, which is a potential. He's a Commonwealth weightlifter for Wales.
Yeah.
And I've trained with him, and he will go in sort of like 5-6 days a week, sometimes doing 2-a-days, training for 2 lifts. That's it, and he's done that for years.
Just snatch and...
Just snatch, clean and jerk.
Nice.
That's all you do. You go in, you snatch, you clean and jerk. You might do some squats, do a little bit of accessory work here and there, but sort of 80% of your training is snatch and clean and jerk.
Reminds me of
doing that for years and years and years, that takes a lot of mental like preparation and having that strong will to go in and do it when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't have that problem because I jump about and I'm like, I don't want to do that, I'll go do this.
With I remember in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, there's a section towards the end where he talks when there's a weightlifting coach he spoke to. It was after he'd had his injury, he'd had like a football to the head or something hit in the head, and he couldn't do, I think it was basketball anymore. So he started doing Olympic weightlifting. They had a really good Olympic weightlifting coach who inspired him. And he said that the best performing athletes were the ones who could tolerate the most boredom within their training, to just show up and do the same thing over and over and over again for, you know, being specialized.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, say you're just an average gym goer and you want to get fitter. A lot of people, because they're not educated, which is not their fault, because there's so much conflicting information and wrong valued information out there in terms of going out there and trying to make push on people's pain points constantly about their insecurities with like their appearance and beauty standards and stuff, to try that and almost carouse them into training in one training style. And that's because that's the product they want to sell, that it's almost like, well, no, actually what would be good for you if you don't really know what you want and you just want to get fitter is not to go and exclusively do bicep curls until cows come home. Maybe it is to actually take a more diverse approach to fitness that looks after your body, that looks after your mind, and gives you more opportunities to explore, enjoy life, and be strong, to be useful, instead of just, you know, just fulfilling that little scratch that's probably not coming from a healthy place.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thoughts more on it. But I can get the when you're training for one thing and you're just like hyper specializing, because kind of with these events, like obviously you teeter off the training because you get like, I'm not doing that, I'm a bit of a rebel. when I do train for the event, like when we're day-to-day training, I play around a lot with what I'm doing. I might change movement selection within the program on a given day after a couple of weeks, if I know it hits the exact same muscle group or similar pattern, just because I'm bored or I just want to switch it up. Like if I'm doing power clean, I might go, you know what, I'm going to do power snatch, or I'm going to do like a hang clean and jerk or something instead. I'm going to play around with it a bit more. Or I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do a Romanian deadlift this week. I'm going to do like hamstring curls. I'm going to do like single leg RDLs. I might play around with it a bit. But when I've built a program, like with the yoke, I had 10 months of training. Once I built that program, it was just you follow that hyper specialization constantly and keep getting more specialized. And if I was ever to change the training program after I've written it, it's because I thought the movement pattern wasn't specific enough to what I was doing. So I'd start doing something training and go, actually it doesn't really feel like what it does on the yoke, so I want to go and switch that to something or modify the movement a bit so it actually adheres more to the law specificity, so that it's actually better in line with how specific I want to get to that event. And I will tell you that it seems like a double-edged sword for me. We'll get back to the food in a second, by the way. For me, it's both freeing and it's very limiting. It's very limiting in that sense of the athletes that go in and train every day for the same thing, but they've done it for years. And I've had a little taste of that in the 10 months, and it's like, it gets boring. Really boring. At least with my one, I had this kind of progression of you start more foundational, so you look at the foundational movements that make up doing a yoke carry for 20 miles, or it was like a half marathon was original, and then you go, okay, well I need to build like these big movement patterns up and just get robust and anti-fragile, and there is that nice progression of things sort of taper more specific. But I can say if you're just picking one training style and sticking with it year round, it is boring as shit. And that is just not for some people. I think they like that. They like that it's the same thing, because in that specialization, there's actually freedom. So I've heard this talked about before, so it's not like a new idea we've come up with. But within setting some sort of boundaries for yourself actually opens yourself up to be more free in life, where you have all these options, and having so many options in life is exhausting. And there's loads of studies where they'll give people like choices on something like a car or like a food item, and they give them like 5 choices, and they pick an item and like, well, how satisfied are you with this now that you've got it? Like, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied, and they can rate it on like a scale, and they can kind of put those together and average it out as a percentage. And the more choices you give people, the less satisfied they are with the choice they make. And I find that with training, especially with the way I've approached it over years, I spent ages learning new training techniques, new methods, because it comes back to the age-old saying that the theories are few but the methods are many. That there's only a few key ideas you actually need to understand with sports science, but the ways you can approach it are that never ending. There's constantly something new coming out every year, a type of training, a system, a style, a tool, a piece of equipment that you can work with. And or a bloody supplement, we won't get into that. But I find that having all those options there sometimes that takes away that freedom, because you just don't enjoy what you're doing. You're constantly stuck in this decision making mode. But when you've got the training for like the yoke or for a 50 miler, because you just show up and do the same thing quite regularly, and it's like a pre-laid path for you, especially if you're like programming your whole year. Now I know some coaches love doing the full annual macro cycle. I'm going to give it a go, I think, next year when I've got my next challenge line. Well, I say next, I think I've got another one brewing, but we'll talk about that another time. But I find that actually having that in place kind of frees you up a little bit, because there's not so much decision making going on anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
It's just decision fatigue, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. The more you...
But the dissatisfaction with the actual decision you've made, because I'll make a training program,
it's just,
and then I'm not satisfied with it.
I say this in life in general, is like you're choosing your regrets.
Yeah.
No matter what decision you make, like it gets to a point where, an example for me is I could have gone down being like a firefighter route and sticking with firefighting.
Yeah.
And choosing that as my career. Or I could choose coaching, and both have got their pros and cons. And no matter which one I pick, I'm going to think, but what if?
Yeah.
What if I did that instead?
There's always a what if.
And there's always that regret of like, I could have done that. Because the cons for one decision are probably going to be like the flip side of the pros for the other.
There's no perfect solution.
So then it's just like you're choosing which one you would like regret less.
There's a really good quote by Ido Portal, the movement dude, and I mean dude is the good word for him, he's a proper dude, is that specialization equals sacrifice somewhere else, or it's like specialization is compromisation. So it means that to pick one path is to not pick the other, and you must understand that sometimes, to especially with training, to specialize into one area, especially if that's not what you need to specialize in. So if it's like, I'm just going to go to the gym and do bro splits training, exclusively bench press and bicep curls, cool, good for you, good for the ego, I'm sure. But what are you sacrificing to actually do that? Like when I see rugby players going in and just doing bench press exclusively, and they're not even hopping on the sled, or maybe doing a deadlift, and they're not maybe looking at, looking after like their shoulder health, stuff like that. It's that specialization for, there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with it.
Yeah. It's just, that's life. No matter what you do, there's always other options.
Yeah.
You
can't
that's
grab
where,
it all.
I think that's where, like, definitely where I sit, and I think that's where you sit, is we're just trying to experience as much as we can. That's where the adventure side of adventure athletes come in. So there's so many options in training. We're just trying to experience it all. We're trying to do as many different things and be ready for anything as possible.
Yeah.
We're missing out on other things like that. Like I said, we're not going to be the best athletes.
We're never going to have peak end performance, but we're going to have diversity.
Yeah. And it's just what you want.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to at the end of the day. I don't think there's one set thing which is like, we have to do this. Just
no.
All like, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, you want to specialize in ultra running.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's train you for that. Oh, you don't want to run at all. You want to just do weightlifting. Cool.
Let's just do that.
Let's train for that.
It's like,
let's try and like add in little bits, so then like we can experience other stuff, but it's not going to
cardio
change
can be
the world,
boring shit for some people.
Oh, it is. It massively
you
is.
don't have to go and run and row. You can do functional training and make it. There's
some people love running.
Yeah, I like running, but I don't like running the road, and sometimes I get bored of it.
I hate running.
There's a session.
I hate running with a passion.
We'll do this soon as a YouTube session, which is a fun alternative to running. It's actually inspired by Dr. Andy Kaplan a bit. There's quite a bit. There's a way of approaching cardio where you can just set up kind of like a functional strength training circuit, and as long as you stay in that right kind of zone of exertion, like heart rate, then we can essentially get the same effect as doing cardio, but we're just carrying around heavy shit and squatting and having fun. And that might be more interesting and engaging for you than going for a run or hopping on the run machine or going rowing. And there are alternatives. Going paddleboarding is fun. Surfing's fun. That is a way better alternative to running if you get bored of running. You haven't just got to do that. But we've been on a lot of tangents with Taylor. So we're getting back in the little system we're going through of setting the goal, designing it, training, and then within it, nutrition. So walk us through what's happening with your nutrition during the training phase, not the event day.
I ate what I wanted to when I wanted to.
What did the makeup of that look like? Was there an eating plan? Was it just ad hoc? Was there an intuitive eating sort of system going on, or was it just anything?
At parts of my training, I was struggling quite badly with my mental health, so there were days where I wasn't really eating. There were other days where I was just eating absolute rubbish. There was no plan. There was nothing there. There was
no numbers. There was no tracking. There was
no tracking. Nothing. Not even intuitive eating, because there were times where I was like, I should be eating. Like, I feel like I should be eating this. This would be more beneficial, and I wasn't doing it.
You're totally different to me then. Where it's like, right, on the yoke, it was like, I'm going to take this steady and this steady. I'm going to use this one for the amount of this a day. I'm going to use this for the timing of this. And then I'm going to dial it in. I'm going to build like like almost like an eating regimen, but it's not going to be strict if you have to eat this. It's more going to be like, well, you have to hit roughly these numbers within a day. And if you don't hit them, it's okay. You can kind of piss around and catch up with it and do other stuff as well. And if you fancy a donut burger, which you still haven't had yet, then you chuck that in there.
All I did for nutrition was, I know from previous experience, when I exercise, I struggle eating. No matter how long I'm exercising for, I'm going to struggle eating.
Do you think a lot of people struggle with eating and sports simultaneously? Because a lot of my clients,
most people don't have to do that.
Say they struggle to eat before they train quite a lot. They find that their eating impacts the training quite a bit. But these people quite often as well are wanting to do things like some running distances, like 5Ks, 10Ks.
I don't know. Like, I've met so many different people with so many different approaches. I can't really generalize that.
Yeah.
But for me, and my experience, I know I struggle eating while I do exercise, and then I get to a point and I crash because I've got no energy because I haven't eaten. And I'm talking specifically like ultra endurance events.
Yeah.
So I'm talking my ultra marathon, my 100-mile cycle. I get to a point like most of the way through it where I haven't eaten for like 8 to 12 hours, probably longer, because I'm talking about from when I wake up, so we're talking maybe like 20 hours without food.
Yeah.
And then I crashed. So I was like, I know I need to get better at eating while I exercise. So when I said I was doing the skipping sessions, I was also bringing food out with me.
Yeah.
And there was one session where I had a rule that every time I messed up the skipping, I had to eat just whatever food was there.
Yeah. That.
Yeah, I was just like, I have to eat no matter what. And I have to drink as well, because that's another thing I struggle with, is drinking. And that helped because throughout this walk, I would bring just food in my bag and I would just walk and eat.
Do you think there's something to be said that you can train yourself to get comfortable with eating around training, and actually in terms of ultra endurance, eating during training?
I think it's something that definitely needs to be looked into with certain people, me being one of them.
Yeah. But do you think it's something you can actually train yourself to do better than you could, say, like last year?
With everything, you can train to do better at it. I was still struggling to eat when I was walking, but
yeah,
that's just something that I'll have to look into for future, and something I'll have to get better at. You can always get better.
Do you think there's a way to optimise it as well for yourself?
I don't know, I'm not at that stage yet.
Yeah, we'll get there. One day. So we've set the goal. We've designed your training program. We've gone through the nutrition.
Yep.
We've gone through the training phase, and now we're getting around to the mindset as we get up to the event. Take us through that on run up to the event. Like, was there any protocols you had for looking after your mindset, for getting ready? Was it a case of like just thinking about it a certain way? And then the day before, was there anything you did in particular before the actual event day to ease your mind or to psych it up or anything like that at all? Because everyone has their different practices, methods and theories.
Like I said before, there was periods where I was really struggling with my mental health. So I was just struggling. I couldn't really think about too much. And then the sort of last 2 days before the event, I was just doubtful that I was going to be able to do it. Again, I wasn't in the best place. I was just like, I'm just going to try and see what happens. Didn't do anything in particular. Like, I was working the day that I started the event.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you were. Do you think that's probably actually for the better?
No, probably not.
No.
I'd have much rather not have worked. But
I mean, keeping you distracted maybe might have been a good thing.
No, I don't think that does help for me.
No?
No, it's just something I had to do.
I find that I need, just before the event, I need a little bit of quiet time to myself. It's manic on the couple of days before, getting everything in place, and I find like I need a little bit of time to just ease off on my own. So there's normally just go for like a walk down the beach.
I think where I don't plan and follow planning as much as you do prior to an event, I don't think any of that really applies to me. I think it'll apply massively to you because you've gone through months of training and preparing, and then there's that build up to the event and all these emotions connected to the event. Whereas for me, I'm more interested in just being able to turn up and do it. So in my head, I was like, no, I'm just going to turn up and then see what happens.
Yeah.
So there's no mental prep before it for me at all. Like, life is just my mental prep. I struggle enough with life, so
So what's another 50 miles barefoot?
yeah.
Right, so mindset, not really much going on there then. Just show up and do it, which I like. So we do the event, we get battered, body's broken to some degree. You've got sunstroke as well. Take us through the first few steps of your recovery then. And I don't mean a recovery plan, I mean how you're recovering so far. In the back of your head now, what are things that you might want to do over the next couple of days just to help yourself ease your body back out of this event, back into normal training? Which you already started yesterday with a barbell.
So yesterday I started doing some upper body stuff, did some benching. Thought I was going to fall asleep on the bench because I was so tired. I've had like a pretty easy couple of days following it.
Yeah.
Not done anything too strenuous. Just light bits of training, coaching, like just usual life for me.
Just that yesterday was actually the day after you finished it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you finished it at, was it 5?
I finished at about 4:30.
Half 4, yeah. Half 4
on Monday.
On Monday. So you went home. What was the first couple of things you did? Sam took you home because you couldn't really drive.
No, I ended up driving.
Oh, I can say because you probably could have driven. Your feet would have just been a bit.
It was just
tender.
I was just worried about my ankle.
Yeah.
Being able to, because I couldn't move my ankle using the clutch, but I just put my heel at the top and just pressed my heel.
You've got pretty
it.
light clutch on that car as well.
So,
I'd park it up.
Yeah, so went back. I just went and laid in bed. I was like, I just need to sleep, but I couldn't sleep, and it got to about probably like 9:30, 10. So I was home at about 5. I think. No, it would have been way after 5 because we did the interviews and stuff. So it would have been like probably 6:30. I got back.
Yeah.
That sounds more like it. So about 6:30, and then just lay in bed till 9:30, not wanting to do anything, trying to sleep, not being able to sleep. And then I got up and cooked some food, came up here, watched some YouTube videos, just munching out for a few hours. Probably went to bed at about midnight, and then slept. Woke up at 1:30 to throw up. Back to bed.
Hit the deck.
Back
and
up
the radiator.
Back up at 7. Just chilled out, ate some food, did a quick session, watched some Marvel shorts. I don't really watch TV or movies, so that shows that I just didn't really have any energy to do stuff. I was just putting stuff on in the background.
Just whatever.
And then I went to coaching, and then today just got up, got ready for this podcast.
You trained your nutrition at all to help you recover, or have you just eaten whatever? Was it like Domino's, Papa John's, or have you been...
No, I had a cauliflower cheese yesterday, and the day before.
Yeah.
And then I've had some like sandwiches and some protein cookies, just like leftovers.
You lived off protein cookies, didn't you? When you walk.
I actually didn't eat that many because I bought 30 and I had like 20 still in the box, and my mum had one, so I had like 9.
I thought you lived off them from the sounds of it when I saw you. No.
No, I've still got a load downstairs. You can try one out.
I'll see how it goes. Not quite in line with my eating regimen. But when you get in, there's that state that your body's in. It takes quite a while for you to come down. So we've got the nervous system in the body. We've got the two little ones we like to talk about a lot, which is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Your sympathetic is your fight or flight system. So that is, predators come along and you're stressed and you've got to deal with it. Or, to be honest, let's talk about it in a real context. You've got an email about, you got a parking ticket, you're pissed off, you see it, fight or flight kicks in like that. Or you walk in the gym, you warm up, fight or flight kicks in, something stressful, some sort of insult on the system has incurred. So insult is just like stress. So we generally talk about in sports science more like an insult on the muscle. So that's like done enough damage and stress on the muscle to actually get some sort of adaptation from it. But some sort of insult has come to the system and has put you in this aroused state psychologically to kind of perform, like a performance zone. We want to get back to that parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state, where the adrenaline levels can drop down, the heart rate's going to slow, your body can actually upregulate those things like saliva and stomach function, help you like recover. When you get in, there's been such a massive insult on the system, 50 miles barefoot in the sun and with sunstroke as well. So that's really damaged your not damaged the immune system, it's really put some hurt on it. And now it needs to get back to that parasympathetic state, that rest and digest, but you're in such a massive like arousal state, really turned on, that you need to get back to that. And that's why you can't relax when you get back in. So as you said, you needed to lie down because your body just needed hard rest, like it needs a proper reset. But at the same time, it's so hard to get back down that. So do you think that there's something to be said about having some sort of down regulation routine, not just within doing one-offs like this, but within training itself?
I think it's very important in training. It all just comes back to just having good recovery protocols, and not just expecting it to happen.
You're not the person who does CrossFit, then hops in the car to drive back to the office like straight away and puts thrash metal on with drum and bass and full whack again.
Yeah, or just like in general, just make sure you've got systems in place. Make sure you're sleeping well. Make sure you're eating well. Make sure you're drinking enough water. Just like the simple things will make a massive difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's like massive for training. And then when you're getting more down to the minute details of performance, that's when you can start looking at, okay, I need like massage therapy, I need to have contrast therapy going between sauna and ice baths, and looking into all those alternative routes. Like 90% of what you need is just sleep, food, water,
and a good training program.
Yeah.
So the right training load. That's enough. That's the 80%. 80% is going to give you 80% of the results. I really like that rule. And then the next 20% is going to come in the finer details. But I'm talking about getting back to that normal state from hyper kind of performance, hyper arousal. Do you think it's important to have a way of getting there, or do you think you kind of just leave your body to it?
For me, I definitely just leave my body to it, let it go through its natural healing process. Like what I was saying before was just what I think majority of people that are training should do. Just sleep, eat, water. That's taken to more of an extreme after doing these things. So you'd need more sleep, you'd need to eat more,
And
you'd need to drink more.
You need to pee a lot more so after these.
Yeah.
That's something I was talking about with you earlier, say like, do you go to the toilet a lot on the night? Because I find after I do one of my events, I'm back and forth. I have a really good sleep after I've done one of my events. I sleep like a baby, so my best night's sleep are actually after one of the events. But I also wake up more times after that than I would in a normal sleep as well, because I'm back and forth to the toilet, because I'm constantly drinking and peeing all the time.
Yeah. So I think that's majority of what it comes down to, but I think it would be very beneficial for people that are pushing their bodies to that higher level to have like breathing systems in place, then start looking at like the ice baths and the saunas and things like that, especially like during the build up, but
yeah,
like having a way of, like you're saying, down regulating after an event is something that would be very useful, something that I haven't done. Because
do you think it's important for just general stress levels as well in your body? I'm not talking about just like training stress, but I'm like, if you feel stressed in yourself, do you think it's quite, and obviously training's helped massively, but do you think actually helping yourself come down from that level of physiological stress might actually help your long-term stress anyway, psychologically?
Well, yeah, but I think, like I was saying, a lot of that will go back to, are you having enough sleep? Are you eating the right food? Are you drinking enough?
Yeah. But say you've got all of those in place. Say like you're going to the gym, you've got your sleeping enough. It's probably not the best, but it's adequate at the moment for what you need. You're just about getting by on it with training. Your eating's 80% of the way there, could be better. Your training program's pretty dull. Say you go to workout classes, so someone's built it for you by a good coach, so you know what you're doing. And then you've got a job that stresses you the fuck out. And you find that when you come from training, even though training helps you de-stress and switch off, you're straight back in that stress environment. Do you think something like having a down regulation practice for you might help you get back into that flow of things and just take that edge off a bit?
I think, like, obviously there are things that are going to help, but if you've got all of those things in place, I think you're in a pretty solid position.
Yeah,
To be honest,
8% right.
Yeah, I don't think you need to overcomplicate it and overthink those things.
Do you think that the fitness world online now is very overcomplicated
It's
compared to
massively
what everyone should know?
overcomplicated. There's so many different things and there's so many little ways, and I think a lot of it is from people looking at research being like, oh, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, and really that will come down to, like, it'll only really affect the top percent of performers. I don't think it'll apply to general population. Most of the stuff that people are on about, obviously they can be used to help, but it's not going to make a massive difference if you've got all the other things in place, like sleeping, eating, drinking, right training, stimulus, like, and everything's like most of the way there. I don't think general population really need to worry.
No, I think there's this big misconception with the information that's released online by people who are probably actually intending well, is that they have a lot of advice based off of studies and research that are predominantly for top-end performance athletes. And whilst it does hold true that it does add like a 1% increase in performance or 1% increase in recovery, that's only important when you've mastered the basics. If you haven't learned how to fish, for say, it's no point screwing around with buying a different line for the pole, or optimizing the rod, or optimizing the wheel, or changing your bait or whatever. If you haven't learned how to fish in the first place, it does not matter.
Yeah.
Right then, 2 questions off of me personally then. How did you feel 5 minutes after you completed the event? So not after you just finished and you're like, oh, I'm done, but 5 minutes after it, when it's sort of setting in.
I think for me, like, it didn't really set in till that, like, 2 hour period that I spoke about before, where I just laid down and I was doubting whether I'd done it or not, and then when I confirmed that I'd done it, that's when it set in. Before that, I think I was just so bad with my sunstroke that I just couldn't process anything. I didn't feel anything. I was just there. Like, that whole bit's just like a bit of a blur, and like looking back, like, I was really just exhausted from the sun.
Yeah, that's where you need people there to, like, you need a support team then, because your cognition's gone, you're quite spaced out, you kind of can't think logically. It's almost like you can't think, can you, once you finished it? You just...
Well, I don't think I was, like, horrendous, because I was still doing, like, interviews and stuff.
Yeah,
and
you're still doing the
very
basic
coherent.
stuff, but, I mean, you're not...
I was still processing everything. I just think that the whole what had happened just hadn't set in.
No. And then my second question then is, now that you've finished it and it's over, do you feel fulfilled? And do you feel like that itch has been scratched?
I think that's an easy trap people can fall into, is setting these goals and being like, that's going to make me fulfilled, that's gonna, like, bring meaning to my life, and it never is.
No.
It's not going to do that. That's an unrealistic expectation. It's just a moment in time, it's an experience, and you move on and you look for other experiences. You would never take it and be like, right, I'm done. But you also wouldn't look at it and be like, that just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It's just that moment in time. It's just that one experience that you've got. Like, even when I complete the 12 labours, I know I'm still going to be challenging myself. It might not be in the way that I am now, but I'm going to be challenging myself in other ways.
You'll be looking for something else.
Yeah, it's a never-ending process. It sounds bad, but there's never any, like, solid fulfillment, because
no,
it's life.
Fulfillment doesn't come from these things. It comes from other things in life. Fulfillment comes
like
from
I was saying earlier, I think a lot of fulfillment comes from saying you're going to do something and you do it. It's just that self-accountability. If you've got that and you're appreciating your life and everything that happens, and, like, your friends, your family, everything, your job, and doing everything with like the right intent, then that's what the fulfillment is.
Do you think fulfillment's more a case of perception and mindset than
Yeah,
over?
that's all it is. Because
Yeah,
whether you're fulfilled or not is dependent on what like your goal of the fulfillment is in the first place. If you've got this big goal in mind and then you do it and then you're like, yeah, I'm fulfilled, then 5 minutes later you're like, right, okay, I've
I
done
know
that,
quite a
I've
lot of
felt that,
athletes
and
that
then
have
that's that.
hit extreme goals and they feel like shit after they finish it. And I think that for me, and I think this holds true for you, these challenges are almost like a catalyst for that perception and mindset. When you finish them, it's not like oh, I'm fulfilled because I've done that, but it kind of helps you have that appreciation for everything else in life. Like when you've been through absolute shit and you destroy your body and your mind is screaming at you like, fucking get out of there, you can appreciate like the things like just being safe and comfortable. Like, oh, things are horrible. So, well, I'm pretty good, you know. I'm indoors, you know. I've got clothes on, I've got food, and you can appreciate things like that more when you've been to those extremes, and you can appreciate things like, fuck, like when I say I'm going to do something, set out to do it, people behind me really actually do love me and show up and support me to do it, even if it seems ridiculous and like I might not achieve it. They actually come out for that, and they do come and believe in me. Like
No.
you can appreciate those things more when you've been for the event, not that you finish it and you just like, I'm fulfilled because I've done it, as you said. Like that isn't what happens. But when you look back on it, and you'll probably find this more, and I have a little bit more time to reflect on the event, that you realise that that it helps you enjoy and have gratitude for other areas of your life, and it kind of it sounds like a training for that in a little bit, or it gives you that little bit of perspective, like a little glimpse into it.
Yes and no, I guess. Um, like I said, it's all about what you want from it. Everyone's got their own different needs for it.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for anything special out of this. It's just a way for me dealing with my mental health.
Yeah.
It's not going to cure it. I have to do loads of other things to help me manage it. This is just one tool that I use, and it's something that helps me a lot.
Yeah.
That I get out of it what I want to get out of it.
I was saying that that mindset would be the goal of it, because as I said, like any expectations you have of doing these events and what you actually get from them are totally different. Like even if you go in with a goal, it's not what you're going to get out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But do you think that doing something so say you came to us now and you're looking to do a challenge, do you think for someone who doesn't have that much appreciation and gratitude and that right mindset for fulfillment, do you think that the process going from average to adventure athlete and doing your first challenge, if you did one, could be a good journey to actually help you grow that area of your life?
Yeah, it's all goes back to that whole idea of the comfort, and when things in your life get so uncomfortable that you have to change, that's when the change is going to happen. If you're in that sort of middle point, you're just miserable, but it's not miserable enough that like you're going to change, because change is also very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you're in that position and you set yourself one of these goals, you're putting yourself into that uncomfortable situation in a controlled way to catalyze the change. Whereas we've been through stuff that's put us in that position, and then we've had no choice but to change, because change was the more comfortable option out of the two. And for change to be the more comfortable option, that's a pretty low place,
isn't it? Yeah.
and that's what I think a lot of people could get out of setting these challenges, is they put themselves into that uncomfortable situation, but like I said, in a controlled way, where they've got coaches there to guide them through it and having support through it, and having those people around them that are helping them do that because they want to make the change in the first place. I think that's what it does. It just puts you in controlled discomfort in a way that's going to force a change, which overall will benefit your life.
It's like optimal discomfort. There's a good study. I think it was Dr. Andy Gatlin again. He's on my bromance list, definitely. I really appreciate the guy. I think it was they did it at his university, which I can't remember which one it is now. I want to say it's either San Diego or Santa Cruz. I can't remember, but they did a study where they got people to hold a dumbbell out in front of them in like a lateral, like a front raise with the delts, and I think it was something like 25% body weight or half body weight, and they did the study where they got them to hold it for a minute, and they didn't tell them how long they did it for. They just got them to do it and told them when to stop. So they're there holding this. If I just imagine I'm holding my dumbbell there, I'm holding that there. You do it for a minute, and they're like, right, you can put it back down. Cool. And they tell you afterwards, they broke the people up categorically into different groups, as in they gave them different, like this, each was a different category, this group, and it didn't matter how they did it, because everyone held it for a minute, the weight, I think. And then they told them what percentage they were off of the average score for it. So they said, like, you're 15% below the average score, you're 5% below the average score, you're 5% above the average score, you're 15% above the average score. And then they did the study again, and this time the student comes in and accidentally leaves a tablet in the corner with the timer on, so they can actually see the timer on the screen. And they find out that the average time was 1 minute as well, and they told them, oh, this is what you scored. So they do it again, and what they find is they start off, and you see that the people who overachieved by 15%, so none of them overachieved, none of them underachieved, they all hit 1 minute and were told to stop. So they come in, they start again, and they get to that sort of like 40-second mark, and they're like, oh my god, they're like, how the hell did I do an extra 15% on top of this? And I can't remember the actual timestamp was they told them, but I think it was actually like 15 seconds. They told them they did like another 15 seconds. They're like, how am I actually gonna like hold this for, like, that's so far away, I'm not gonna make it. And they give up by like the 50th second. So their perception was that you did like way more than everyone else, and they gave up because it seemed too big for them. Next group then, the people who were 15%, and I'm pretty sure it was 15 seconds, was 5 seconds, 15 seconds, same other side. So 15 seconds under, and they get like 30 seconds in, they're like, oh my god, like I gave up in like, 15 seconds from now, I gave up. So like, oh god, they'll just about get to that place where they were like told they were, and they'll give up there. They'll give up on that like 45-second mark when they did a full minute before. Now the dangerous group, 5% above, 5% below. They come in, well, you were 5% below the average, so they're only like, I think, as I said, about 5 seconds below that 1 minute mark, but they did a minute. They come in, not only do they hit the full minute, but then they exceed it as well by quite a significant amount, because they want to be slightly better. They want everyone to be better who goes in, but it seems obtainable. Their perception of it is that it's only 5% more, it's only 5 seconds more to hit that minute, and then they hit it, they're like, I may as well just keep going. And then the other group, then you're 5% above, well, they've got that little bit of boost in their head that, oh, I did more than a minute, so they get the minute, they're like, yeah, I can keep going, and because they've done a minute before, so their perception is like it's only a little bit more, but they thought that's what they did anyway, so they hit it, and like, I want that new PB, so they just keep going and going and going. And the 5% below and the 5% above group smash their goal. Like, if it was like a minute, some of them up to like 2 minutes, they would like double in the time, whereas the people who told that they were far above the actual time they did or far below either failed or just about hit their the goal they were told they hit, or in the group that were over, they didn't hit none of them hit it at all. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't really know where you're going with that, but
so
yeah.
having that stress too far above what's going to help you, you're going to crash. It's going to be too ambitious, so the goal becomes intimidating for you. So if you're in a place of, as we're saying there, with change, where you need help having change, you need some stress and discomfort to get out of your zone, then having too much discomfort could break you, and your perception is going to be fucked. You're like, I just cannot do that. That's way too much, even if you physically could. Whereas the group that were far too low, so if there's just not enough stress at all, your perception is going to be that the actual amount of stress you do need is like too much if you're not having enough, because you're like, you know what, well, this is just too much already, there's no way I can make that leap and get there. Whereas if you've got someone there who's kind of walked the path already, or walked a similar path, because no one's going to walk the same path as you, just a similar one, then they can be there and know, like, help you find exactly that little 5% stress above. that can just help take you a bit higher, or if maybe you're having a bit of a bad week, you're just going to be just below that line of having that butter zone. But also, that what that study showed as well is our perception, a bit like the Ross one on the stage, our perception of fatigue and performance is very bad. So sometimes it is good to have someone else there to help you figure that out too.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I always say is it's always good to have a good coach around you that can help you figure out the sort of boundaries and limits, and know exactly. Well, they'll never know exactly, but they'll have a better idea of you than what your limits are.
Yeah, I think I figured that out a lot when I trained with Jack Spillets. Before that, I know overtraining is a bit of a tricky subject when you start talking about athletic performance, because overtraining syndrome and the act of overtraining are two different things entirely. So to briefly just touch on it, tangents with Taylor. Overtrained syndrome is like, if you're an average gym goer, you're just not going to experience it. It's a really, really severe, like, fatiguing condition you work yourself into over it's chronic. It takes a long time to get into, and it takes a very long time to get out of, to just hit baseline again. Like, you're talking months, sometimes up to a year or more, depending on the level of overtraining that took place. Whereas just running yourself down and kind of burning out a bit, that's a different kettle of fish. But the act of overtraining itself, you can actually sustain for very long periods of time. So the amount of actual stress that's optimal for you to continually grow and improve, if you go well above that, you can keep training week to week and kind of adapt to have the a good way to put this is that you'd have the work capacity to do that every week, but you don't have the adaptive energy to actually adapt to that work volume every week. And for me, this was, I used to strength train like 6 days a week, and I'm talking I was going smashing deadlifts and farmers carries at every single session. There was a program that Matt Jones had designed me, and it was only like 3 or 4 sessions a week, but I would go and do it 6 days a week, sometimes 7, and just obliterate my body. And I could do it every day and more after I finished it as well, which was quite a good thing for me in some ways, because my work capacity, I'd already built a big work capacity overcoming obesity from the hours of endurance training, but this really upped my work capacity with like weights and big functional movements, which is why that's quite an area I think I excel at when it comes to doing these events, is like functional movements in particular. Like, I can do a lot of like barbell cleans in a row, or like a ton of deadlifts, and it takes a long time for me to fatigue, even with really heavy weights. But then my like peak end power is not the same, it's lower. But what I found when I started working with Jack is, because I actually adhered to what he'd given me, like not just the rest within the program, but the rest within the week, I seen that I was like, this doesn't actually feel like I'm training that hard. It doesn't feel like enough, because my perception was training should be this hard. It should be fucked. But the actual results I got were way bigger, because someone who actually knew where I should be for my own abilities was writing the program and giving me the instruction. And even though I could actually handle more in terms of what I could take, that isn't actually what I needed at the time.
Yeah. So I think what this goes to is that you should get a coach. Quick hint, we're dropping some programs. By the time this is out, our programs will be out, and we'll be offering our one-to-one services, so keep your eyes out for that. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums up the 50-mile walk. I think we've spoke about everything.
Wraps this episode pretty well.
Yeah, we'll have our YouTube channel up and going by the time this is out. We would have recorded a podcast with a guest. We've got a guest coming on this Sunday.
Yep. We've got a couple lined up for the next few weeks as well, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got loads lined up. But the podcasts are coming out every 2 weeks, Friday at 5. So then it gives us some time to edit and make sure everything's how we want it before we release them, especially now that we've got the cameras going.
Hey,
so yeah,
bit of play on that, wasn't there? We've tried many things,
yeah,
but we got it.
Everything's upgraded now. We got the videos going, and yeah, just finish off with Who Adventures Lives.
Yeah, well, actually to do the little boring bit on the end. So if you don't already, follow us on Instagram, Facebook,
Spotify,
and YouTube at The Adventure Athletes. You can find us there. If you want access to the free training program that's out currently, Average to Athlete 1.0, as it will always be getting upgraded and staying free, then pop us an email over on any of the social media accounts. You'll find a link there. We will be releasing more training programs soon, not necessarily loads of free ones.
They'll be out by the time this is out. So
yeah, we got our
you'll have a big choice.
Our big adventure sports kind of list. We're going through like surfing, martial arts, mountain biking, quite a few sports we're going to give you training programs for. And we're going to run you through some videos with those as well, as we're introducing you to some new training styles, such as looking after a lot of prehabby kind of stuff, as well as some just new movement which I haven't done before. So there will be tutorials along with those programs coming out, and we'll be changing up the way as well that we're delivering the programs to you to make it easier in the future and easier for you to track and see your progress during training. And on that note, I think that's just done.
Yeah.
Who Adventures lives.
Happy adventures, lads. Let's go.